Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning from Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and today we're discussing Goodwill console hunting, European work habits, flying booms, and dabbling, all on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers. And welcome, everyone, to episode 201.
I got to say something about 201. Okay, we're going to do 400 episodes. That's my limit. So we have...
Are you going to make it?
Yeah, so here's what I'm saying. We have
You're over halfway there.
After today, we have more episodes behind us than we do in front of us.
Welcome back, everyone, and we're here for our next 100, our next century, our third century.
Oh, God.
Right, our third century. It's ridiculous. Okay, we're going to start off with a little bit of news today. The first thing we're going to have is an URTA report from Stan and Steve. They just did the URTAs this weekend, right?
Yeah.
Just got back.
But the problem is that you experienced zero snow.
There was no de-icing involved.
Yes, no alcohol. So you had zero alcohol.
No, I had that.
Oh, that's good to know. We'll let the people from URTA know that. And you weren't staying in that horrible hotel.
I like that hotel, especially the lobby.
That hotel is closed.
Yeah.
Yes, they're
it's
closed
in bankruptcy,
now.
They told us, I think.
I think Trump took over.
Trump's going to buy it.
He's going to buy another hotel. Okay. So URTA. So how was it, guys?
It was the best.
Yeah,
it was
worked
the best.
really well. I liked the Zoom feature a lot. I thought it was everybody's experienced now with it, so people were more or less at ease doing it. And it was kind of fun watching all of our colleagues and the students coming from all kinds of locations, from sitting in their bed relaxing to sitting in their office or sitting in the scene shop talking to people.
Yeah, I could be serious about this. So when you sit in a room with 100 other people 4 feet away and try concentrate on the conversation with the background, people don't think about this, but it takes a lot of energy to concentrate in a noisy environment, and it would exhaust me. So I had a lot more energy. I was more focused. I was able to share files and websites and things about my students' work with these students. I was prepared. When I took a break, I went out on my patio. I kissed my wife. I came back in. I had a glass of wine. No, I mean, it was just great. And I said to them, let's not lose this. We could be doing the Zoom thing in Chicago. You could have more sessions. You could have the restaurants. You could do you could have the banquet. You could do other socializations around it. It was a better experience in the 15 minutes were of a higher value in this method than they are face-to-face.
Well, first of all, it doesn't only exhaust the recruiter, it also exhausts the student.
Absolutely. But they don't do it for 4 days.
No, they don't do it for 4 days, but they're still listening to the same old bullshit every time the new person comes over to them. And to try to figure out why Stan is different from David or different from Steve
mix us
or
up.
different, they get mixed up. I thought you were the guy from Ohio. No, I'm the guy from Long Beach.
That's right.
No. I always hated URTAs. I did URTAs for years. So thank God I don't do them anymore, and we'll never do them again.
But we're still doing them, so don't trash it.
No, I'm only going to trash the way it used to be, because I will bet anyone $100 right now that there's no way in the world that they're going to go back to that. It's just too expensive. And it's cheaper for the students. I believe Steve mentioned that. It's cheaper for the students. It just makes no sense to fly over to Chicago during the worst time of the year to be in Chicago just to meet with students. Again, everybody's running from table to table. It's total chaos.
But I did miss hanging out with Steve and other friends in person. I did miss that.
You guys have been there. You know what happens. It's on Sunday, and all of a sudden you're trying to catch an early flight back so you can get to your Monday.
A blizzard's moving in.
You can get to your Monday morning class. So all of a sudden on Sunday, if you're a student, maybe 15, 20% of the people have had to fly out to get back to their teaching obligations too. But you're right, David. I mean, we were talking about why are the numbers up this year. The numbers are up because there's no hotel bills. There's no airfare cost. All of a sudden, this was incredibly economical if you're a student to attend URTA.
Yeah.
First thing I noticed was that You're not shouting. Your voice isn't dead at the end of the day. It's a private meeting.
It is. I thought that was more intimate, and you're not tired. I wasn't exhausted.
So my question to you is now, can you send out offers like right now?
No, February 8th, we can send offers, and we have to guarantee until March 1st. That hasn't changed.
Well, good luck on getting the students you want, and good fishing out there, as they say. So, hey, let's get started. Steve has our first question.
It comes from Becky in Virginia, and she writes, how do you choose a console for a show? All right, so I have two things to say, then Stan and Dave can jump in there. The first thing is I rarely choose a console anymore. I let my programmer choose the console. But in the spirit of your question, it depends on the size and scope of the show. So in its easiest form, let's say I'm running 24 moving lights. Then I'm aware of budget. So 24 moving lights, an Ion can run that in its sleep. It's no problem. So boom, I save a lot of money right there having an Ion do it. If I'm running 200 moving lights, and I'm sure there are people who will disagree with me, but if I'm running 200 lights, then I'm grabbing a Grand MA. It's just the firepower and the computing capability of the console. So I look at my budget, and do I need to rent a Grand MA for X amount of money, or can I rent an Ion for 20 cents on the dollar, maybe less of what a Grand MA costs? So I can take that money I'm saving and put it into fixtures, or put it into someplace else in the show. So that for me, it just comes down to the computing power of the console and the ease of doing things. Some consoles, it's easier to do things. But at the end of the day, most shows I do these days, I ask my programmer, and my programmer says, okay, what do we need to do? What does this have to do? What are you after? Let's talk through the show. And then he or she comes back and says, heck, we need a hog for this, or we need a whatever for this. So I leave it to them. What about you guys?
Yeah, never force a console on a programmer. I always ask the programmer, what do they want to use? I tell the programmer, okay, there's going to be 60 movers in this plot, and I'm going to need some very specific and elaborate effects, and they're going to be these types of effects. What do you feel comfortable speccing out? And if the programmer says, well, I would spec out a Grand MA, but I don't know the Grand MA, then then you're kind of stuck, right? You're gonna have to find a new programmer.
That's the wrong programmer.
That's the wrong programmer. But sometimes you're stuck with programmers. I mean, you can go into a union house, and there's going to be someone could be the house programmer, and they're going to be paid to be the programmer, no matter what, and they have an Ion in that room. These are very important considerations. But if someone says, I think a Grand MA, but I'm a little rusty on it, but I'll get up to speed. Oh my God, that could be a total disaster. Because if you start bogging down during writing cues, because that programmer is not facile on that board, you are screwed. Because what are you going to do then? You're going to fire the person? It's going to be an issue. So you want to make sure that programmer feels very comfortable.
When you're choosing a console, it's never a good time to go, I think I'll use the new RAT 5000. See how it works. That's a bad idea.
Don't learn a new one on a show. Yeah, learn that in the lab or go to the rental house.
Same thing with a light. Don't learn a new light on the show.
Right.
If you want to use a new light, before you spec the light, have the company send you that light.
That's right.
Or demo the light so you know that it will do what you want. Test
drive, or we used to go to the rental houses to, hey, I'm going to this theater for summer stock, and they have this board, and I don't know it, and they would set it up for you in the back of the shop, and you just sit there for a day or two and get to know it. Randall in Oregon writes, I want to hang flying sidelight ladders on motor points. How do I rig this so they don't spin? And yes, I do want to use movers on them too.
Oh,
yeah. So this is a question that's been on my mind today and for a while, because we have a situation, where we left to put side light on the side of the stage, and they get into wave scenery moving on and off. And I have a new TD who wants to teach motors and trussing and rigging. And I would just love to have 4 per side, bring them up and down wherever we need. I would also our spacing of our fly system is such that if we put high side pipe ends on our electrics, we have to be 1 pipe away from a leg or a border. So if I've got flying side light booms, I can avoid those high sides or those pipe ends. So man, I would love to know how to do this. And the truth is, I don't really know the answer. So maybe you guys do.
I have one answer. Steve, do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, we use a flat truss. So, I put a couple half-ton motors on it. The whole thing is, 18, 20 inches wide. And we fly it out that way on 2 points.
I'll tell you what we do in Europe, and that is in the larger opera houses, we have a huge upstage, downstage truss on either side. And from there, you tie off your ladders. And your ladders will be actually clamped to the truss. And that truss gives you enough stability that it will not swing when you raise it up and down or when moving lights are on it.
So I love that idea, David, but let me throw you a curveball. So in my space in Florida, on stage left, thanks to Brackley Freyer, because he's the one who designed the system, I've got about 8 or 10 or 12, 14 big, thick multi-cables, and then we have a belaying pin rail, up at the torm, and so all those things, so we can make any pipe electric, and they swag over to whatever pipe we electrify. So that upstage downstage truss would be impacting with those swags.
Well, you move the swags out of the way. I mean, you see that in a lot of theaters also, in a lot of large theaters, these big cable swags, and they always tie them up. And then then they release them when when the electric needs to come in, you release them. James in North Carolina writes, can you discuss light plots used in the States versus overseas? Do you, for example, draft in metric? Is there a preferred gel company there? Does the crew speak English? How can I find work abroad? How many questions are there here? There are like 4 questions in one.
James, you want some fries with that?
Light on the sauce, baby. Light on the sauce. Okay, so first, I'm going to make this really fast. Okay? A, always draft in metric. Because the U.S., along with Myanmar and Liberia, are the last holdouts of the stupid imperial measurement standard. Metric makes so much sense. And I remember when I was in high school, or maybe no, elementary school, they say, listen, you're only going to have to learn about this 12-inch thing and 20 and 36 inches to a yard, and because we're going to go to metric in about 10 years. Well, like 50 years later, we're still doing this. What the hell's wrong with us? Yes, so metric, always draft in metric. Regarding the plots, the differences in the plots, I always ask the master electrician for a house rep plot, and I try to use similar fixture symbols. I study the drafting conventions that they are used to and make sure that when I draft my plot, they use similar conventions. Overseas plots are usually in AutoCAD. So everything must be converted to DWG if you only know Vectorworks or if you only have that program. If you have AutoCAD and know Vectorworks in AutoCAD, that is very important. That will work for you very well if you're doing overseas work. Always ask for a complete house equipment list. And don't be afraid to ask the master electrician about specific house equipment that you are unfamiliar with. Always do your research, but there's nothing wrong saying, I've never used this 2K PC. How does that differ from a Fresnel? Though you may not want to say that because that's going to really show your ignorance. Do your research, okay? If you want a specific fixture, always make sure you ask what their availability is to that particular theater. You may have to go with a substitute. Like, for instance, if you're doing a show like in Madrid and you want to use a clay packy fixture, and for some reason the local rental houses don't have that fixture, you may have to do a substitute. So that's, again, a very important thing to ask the electricians. They know that. Regarding gel stock, just ask the theater and ask the master electrician what gel stock that they have access to. How do you get a job overseas? I think we talked about that. How do you find work? You find an overseas director. And learn a foreign language. I think Thaddeus was talking about this. He knows what? German. he knows Italian, he knows Spanish. If you know those three, you're going to be fine.
And once you're there, be nice. And I know this sounds simplistically naive, but if you're going to be in Madrid for a couple weeks doing a show, get someone to take you to the other theaters. Go see a couple shows where they might be able to hire an international designer, leave a business card, leave a resume, shake someone's hand, be nice, be social. They're not going to find you if you don't go see them. So you're not really doing something bizarro. It's, here I am. I happen to be here. Come see my show down at this theater.
You are listening to Light Talk, and today, Light Talk, I'm excited for this, is sponsored by...
From across the mighty Pacific, here comes Illegitimate Panda. Illegitimate Panda, the good men and women who brought you the splosh. It's not a spot, it's not a wash, it's a splosh, the flagship of our Crippled Dragon Moving Light series. And our engineers are at it again, and it's no time to reflect on our past success. Illegitimate Panda has ripped our newest lighting fixture idea from the American headlines, and we want to give a tip of the hat to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. As the industry leader in concert lighting, Illegitimate Panda is proud to introduce, for Groundhog Day 2021, the Jewish Space Laser 3000. That's right, forget fireworks and cheap pyro rigs. Now you can call down the power of the Old Testament with our new Jewish Space Laser 3000. But be careful. Used carelessly, our laser can mutilate cattle, boil lakes, and start forest fires. Who needs the clay packy Xylos when you can have the Jewish Space Laser 3000? And as a bonus, none of your valuable shop space is taken up with dozens of road cases. Just launch your Jewish Space Laser 3000 into low stationary orbit over North American NFL stadiums and let the light shows begin. And for our Orthodox friends, we offer 3 additional space lasers, one for meat, one for dairy, and one for Passover. And for the discriminating lighting designer who moonlights as a mohel, ask about our precision accessory kit so the Jewish Space Laser 3000 can be used for brisses. Illegitimate Panda, always thinking of things you never considered.
Awesome. I got to get me one. I think I'm going to get me 3.
3?
For all my Christian friends, I want the Trinity version. I want all 3. I want the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, too.
So I was really worried about offending people. And if I did offend you, I'm sorry. But I was really worried.
I mean, what's offensive is that somebody had these thoughts in the first place. That's what's offensive.
I sent a copy of this to David to proofread for me, and I wasn't paying attention. And I sent it to my accountant, Howard, who was trying to set up a tax meeting. Yes, he is Jewish. And I immediately call him, and he goes, "I don't know what that was. It was oddly funny."
Oddly funny. Oh my
that's
God.
Funny. Oh, that's a great. That's just maybe the sponsor of the year for sure.
It's pretty damn funny.
It's pretty funny. Well, and now back to Light Talk.
Well, those crazy ducks tell us that it's time for another installment of Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about no more 10 out of 12.
Get away from me, you 10 out of 12. You're out of here.
Okay, for the people who don't know what we're talking about, 10 out of 12s, it's usually the weekend tech and dress rehearsal time. The tech time as far as setting lighting levels and then doing dry techs and then doing a rehearsal and all that. 10 out of 12s actually comes from the equity term where you're actually working 10 hours out of 12 hours.
It's the epitome of workaholicism. And it's legal. It's a negotiated policy. And you know what's worse than that? Stage managers must receive 8 hours of rest between the end of work on one day and the commencement of work on the following day, which means by contract, a stage manager can be expected to work 16 hours a day.
Well, it's not just the stage managers. Just about all the tech people and designers work 16 hours a day during that weekend. 10 out of 12 has been a staple of regional theater and Lort theater and a lot of theaters. Not so much in the opera world, thank God, but certainly in musicals. And there are some reasons for this. Probably the biggest reason that I know in the United States is because theater time is expensive. And you're squeezing in all that tech time over 2 days, which would normally take in a theater probably about 3.5, 4 days, 4 rehearsals, 5 rehearsals maybe. So that's why it's done. One of the reasons why it's done, but probably the main reason in North America.
I'm all for like an 8 out of 10. That for me, that's it. What I find is if you do a 10 out of 12, either the time is completely wasted and no one's brave enough to say, we're kind of wrapped for the day. Let's just call it a day. They keep kind of muddling along, trying to get something done. And if they could come up with a 12 out of 14, they would do that. They would find a reason that they need that to work in. But not, 10 out of 12s, I think their time has come and gone.
I'm in agreement with Steve. I think I think we have so many on the practical side of this. So aside from this sort of the lack of concern for health and rest and my school has recently adopted, and I'm happy to see it, a day of rest. And I say this tongue in cheek. Oh, they've reinvented the Sabbath. Like we should have been doing this all along, right? It's sort of a natural thing.
Well, Monday's the day of rest, isn't it? Mondays are always dark.
Once you're running.
Oh, so our Mondays are always dark.
Yeah, we have Mondays off, but Monday's still a school day at school. This Monday's still faculty meeting days. It's still a work day. Right. So anyway, I'll just say I'm for it. And I think we have tools now where we can be productive in advance in ways that we didn't have them before.
Like visualizers, you mean?
Absolutely. There's no reason. I mean, I used to, before there were visualizers, I would sit down with my director and my script and we'd go through the play scene by scene and talk about what we wanted. And we'd sort of have a jump on it. So that we got into the theater, we could experiment, but we weren't starting from scratch. Now with a visualizer, I should have a rough cues. I should have my rough cues in there. And if my director would sit with me in a visualizer, we could really make these things more efficient. So one thing that I think we're going to do, we are re-examining our both production meetings and design meetings and reimagining how we do this. And I talked to my production manager about this, and she's supportive. We're going to schedule a pre-viz day, right? Which can be done once the set's done. Basically, once we have the floor plan of the set, we can, in a day or two after that, we can be in a pre. So scheduling time for previs will definitely reduce the need for these 10 out of 12 marathons. So I'm hoping that that's going to start to catch on.
Well, I think the both of you are old designers.
And fat.
Yes, and we're fat too. I don't think Stan's fat. I'm definitely fat. I've got 30 pounds of COVID weight on me. But come on, this is the theater. The 10 out of 12s is the magic time for the creative team. That is when you solve all the problems. I think that your case is about getting overtired. Absolutely. I do understand that. I think that Steve's correct. After a while, you get so tired. I think it's how you structure the 10 out of 12s. But I think it's just different depending on the show and how elaborate the show is. But I would hate to give up that time.
At least in a university, the problem is that morning session when you're kind of working through the show. You may create some problems you're not aware of until you get to the rehearsal at night. And, I just think this is how it is in college, not Broadway. But I think in college, what happens is the director wants to run that show no matter what. We're going to run this show at 5 no matter what. And we're not going to stop for anything. So now we're in a show, we're running it, and we're seeing there's some problems. So instead of we're not at a tech anymore, we're at performance level and take some notes and fix it tomorrow during the day before we come back in at the night. So I think the 10 out of 12, maybe the idea behind it was good, but now it's simply turned into 2 rehearsals. One without costumes, one with costumes, and everybody else has to work as fast as they can to support the director and the cast on stage. And then when you roll back around on that Monday night or Tuesday night, now the director's in full panic mode because he has lost control of his show for the 10 out of 12. And Monday night we're running, and now there's even more problems Monday night because we haven't had time to fix the problems that we faced.
Because we didn't go back, because you didn't fix them in the first place.
Yeah, we never really fixed them. So I'm an advocate. If you want to add that 16 hours in, at least at a university, of the 2 10 out of 12s, or the 20 hours, back up your rehearsal time a little bit. Just back everything up by a week. Start your rehearsal the 3rd week of the semester, not the 4th week of the semester. I understand LORT theaters can't do that. I understand where there's money on the line. But at universities, the one thing that we have is time.
Yeah. One thing we did at our university is we actually started pre-techs on Thursday. We'd have technical rehearsals on Thursday and Friday.
That's what we still do here.
Yeah, but in the profession, that doesn't happen a lot, unfortunately. And also in the profession, to be quite honest, directors are professional. They know how it works. So they can deal with losing their cast for 2 days. Actually, it's only 1.5 days. So they're not like saying, we're going to do a run-through no matter what. They understand that run-through on Saturday night is going to be stop and start.
So we're talking about two different things then. We're talking about the university world versus the professional world.
Right. I'm talking about the professional world. I'm not talking about university.
And is if the 10 out of 12 is going to remain in the professional world, then it has to remain at the university level so people get a sense of what it is and can prepare for it.
That's right.
I can't tell you, I know this sounds horrible, but it's happened to all of us. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a rehearsal and the director goes, okay, we're going to spend the next 90 minutes getting that curtain call right. and you know, what they do is they spend 30 minutes getting the curtain call right, and then they spend 60 minutes BSing around. And a lot of jokes are told, and they're laughing.
That's not going to happen.
I just want to add another perspective to this, that people who have studied labor and productivity, there's actually, I think there's a quotient to this, but every hour after you start working, the productivity level decreases exponentially. So the amount that you would have achieved in your first hour of work, and this is in any profession, right, versus what you would achieve in the 8th hour of work is proportionately so much less because the fatigue over time, right? So you're more productive. Let's say you can make 10 widgets in the first hour, but by the 8th hour, you're only going to make 3 widgets. So working longer does not necessarily equal more productivity. That's a misnomer. Yeah,
but when you have a limited amount of time, you're going to give up those extra 6 to 8 hours.
But what I'm telling you is, to Steve's point, if you had more first 4 hours and less last 4 hours, you'd actually get twice as much done.
Yeah, but a lot of times companies have performances of another show in the afternoon on that Monday or Tuesday. They're stuck to a very specific schedule.
I understand.
Or there are classes in the theater. We do that in our school. We use the theater as a classroom, so we can't clear out all those.
We don't do that at UF.
But some schools aren't as lucky as you.
Right.
They don't have the space.
I'm just making the point about if you think you're going to get that much done in the 11th to the 12th hour, you're going to get a fraction of the amount done and what you did from the first hour to the second hour.
But even if you only get 15 minutes of work done,
it's
that's
not
better
work.
than getting.
It's how productive it is.
I understand, but let's say you work for an hour and the production is 15 minutes. You're going to give up that 15 minutes because you're never getting it back. I'm not. I'm gonna. That 15 minutes could be like 6 light cues. So, it ain't going to happen. You don't have the time in the profession. You just don't, especially in North America. It's different in Europe. You're in the theater for 5-6 weeks. That's different. But in North America, you're not. I can't tell you how many shows I've lit over rehearsals that I may have had 4 hours of tech time on.
So how do we make North America more like Europe?
That's a whole nother political discussion.
I'll take the food in a New York minute, right? I'll take the food, I'll take the wine, and you know what?
You nationalize the theaters, first of all.
Yeah, right. My first experience in Europe was working in Valencia, David, and you know that town. And I was working at the museum, and I was amazed that we get up at like 8 o'clock. We would go to the corner coffee shop and have a latte. We would show up and work at 9:30, 10 o'clock. We'd work till 2.
Yeah, it's civil.
It's very civil. Have a long lunch, then go away, then have and then come and work until like 7:30, and then have a late dinner. It was really different, and I have to say, it was much more civilized.
I'm going to say that when I first went to Europe and started working in 1984, I thought I cannot get the show done because of their schedules.
But you did.
And I learned very quickly that you can get the show done.
Yep.
And so I look at the American model, and I think we waste a lot of time in the theater. I think we're not as organized. Everything is like, take one for the team. We got to get this done. Just, butcher your way through it.
It's a bit Marta-like, isn't it?
I mean, if the Europeans can do it,
Let me amplify Steve's point. When I went to graduate school in Honolulu, coming from New York, where everything is running at, warp speed in New York City, I got there and I had the same feeling Steve had, as you just described, in Europe when he went. I'm thinking, these people are never, ever going to get this show open at the speed they are working. I just thought, it's impossible. And you know what? They did. And they got it open. And the show was fine, and the quality was good, and they didn't stress out. And I went, holy crap. And it shifted my paradigm. I think Steve is right.
The point is, if you've got 5 weeks in the theater in Europe, you can work 7-8 hour days. If you've got 10 days in the theater in the United States, you're working 16-hour days. You're paying for it, but you're working 16-hour days.
Well, the question then is that a good idea?
Right, that's the point.
Or is it just a financial idea?
It's totally about fitting in a season of shows within a limited amount of time and paying for the theater. These theaters are very, very expensive. Another thing, in the United States and North America, we usually have a crew that is paid by the hour. In Europe, they're all on salary.
That's true. That's a big difference.
All right?
Yeah.
They've got permanent jobs. They're all on salary. Everything's taken care of. Health is taken care of.
They can strike.
They can strike at any time, but they usually have 3 shifts.
8, 16, 24. But the Met does that. The Metropolitan Opera does that.
Exactly. And there's an overnight shift too.
Right.
In these large theaters like the Met are also.
It's just an overachieving paradigm.
Well, then you have to tell these artistic directors to only do like 4 shows out of a season instead
Well,
of
I think that's what the uprising is.
They can't do it. They can't fill the seats. You have to sell so many tickets.
Well, let's make the thing sustainable.
Okay, so here's another point of view. If I have a really good stagehand crew, then the 10 out of 12s, they're still 10 out of 12s, but they are more or less enjoyable and things get done and they're productive. When I have a crew that the theater is, summer stock or small, very small regional theater, but when I have a crew that's not that skilled, that unfortunately they're working for a low pay scale, and they have to start their career somewhere. When I have a crew that's not very experienced, it's hell in the theater because everything takes twice as long. So you're slowing down. I mean, it's just amazing. The first time I did a show at the Kennedy Center, I forgot, it's been some time, but those guys made something goofy years ago, like $50 an hour. And I thought, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, what I noticed about them is, and I'm telling you, I'm not exaggerating, they never walked anywhere. They were always at a little clip, always a little trot. They were always a step ahead of you. They all had toolboxes with them. I mean, they were seeing a problem before it was happening. So that $50 an hour, that was what a great bargain that was. But then you go someplace and the crew is just kind of, then boy, it's rough. Okay, I need to focus this light. How long does it take 6 guys to pull a genie lift out?
I'm with you, Steve. That's how I was trained to be. You see the problem before it happens. That's the Northeast way.
Yeah, a good skilled union crew makes all the difference.
All right. Well, Steve has the last question of the day.
William up in BC writes, is it better to master a single console or be able to dabble on a half dozen?
Half dozen donuts?
Well, I guess it depends. I mean,
I'll go for a baker's dozen.
Yeah, that's 13.
I think the more you know, the better you are. The better you're off.
Agreed.
The really good programmers I know, 2 or 3, are really masters of one console. And they can make that one console do amazing things. And that's simply the console they focus on. So if you're trying to be that $1,000 an hour programmer for the Olympics, I think you really master the console that is engaged for that event. If you are starting your career out, I think it's not unusual when you're 20-something that you may have to go into a theater and do a little programming yourself. So I think it's not a bad idea to understand how ETC works. We've all been using that board since middle school. But then I think it's also important to understand something about the Strand consoles, to understand something about the Grand MA, to understand something about the Hog. It takes us back to where David started the conversation. You kind of get an equipment list of the theater. And when you know you're doing a show in wherever, Wyoming, 6 months from now, and it says they have a Roadhog, if you've never seen a high-end Roadhog, you better start dabbling in it and getting a sense of how it works. What do you guys think?
I think you hit the nail on the head.
I do too. Nothing more to say. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org for future guests, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to the podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
we are not dismissing our law firm and our defenders. So if you decide to litigate us, the same folks, Fleck, Flock, Flair, and their paralegal Snoop, they'll be around defending us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and from deep in the heart of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about even more happenings in our crazy industry.
All that and a new sponsor.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning with your Jewish space lasers.
We only want the kosher space lasers.
Circumcising squirrels. Toodles.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Light Talk.